Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to our meeting of the Tennessee Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations. We're delighted to have you here. We have a full calendar this morning, and I will take us immediately into the business of the meeting. Do any of the members have any recognitions or personal privilege that they need at this time? Director.
Thank you, Chairman. It's a privilege to announce we have some special guests with us here today. We've got with us Dr. Murad Ariq, who is the chair of the Jennings and Rebecca Jones Chair of Excellence in Urban and Regional Planning at MTSU. With him, he has a group of their scholars in the Scholars Program. This is what is this, the third year? Third year Scholars Program, and these are all undergraduate students at MTSU who go through a very rigorous selection process, and if they're selected in this program, they spend the entire year working on a capstone project. They also attend a number of information sessions from different speakers, and it's a very distinguished program, and we're delighted that they could join us here today.
Thank you very much and welcome. I had the opportunity to chat with these fine young people for a few minutes, and there's some of the nation's business leaders, one veterinarian there, and several political scientists. So welcome. We're glad you're here, and we're proud of you. Our first item of business on your calendar, tab 1, would be the minutes for the December 25 meeting. I presume you've read it, but we will take a minute for you to look at it. Shoot. I believe it has been a minute, and if there's no objections, the minutes will be received. There being none, the minutes are approved and received. Thank you very much. Next on our calendar is item 2, the commission and staff update. I'm sorry, Dr. Lippert, go ahead.
Thank you, Chairman. So the first item on the update, a commission update, is rather late breaking news that we just found out about actually after we originally went to press. And that is that TACIR member, longtime TACIR member, County Clerk Mary Gaither from Tipton County is going to be retiring from her role later this year after 33 years of service as the county clerk in Tipton County, and has been a member of TACIR since 2019, and an excellent member. And I just want to ask everyone to join me in thanking her for her service. And County Clerk, would you like to say anything?
It's truly, well, here we go. You got me. It's truly been an honor, and TACIR is a phenomenal association for the legislature, and with Chairman Yeager and all the commission members, and of course Executive Director Lippert does a phenomenal job, and of course all the TACIR folks just do an amazing job, and so I just appreciate the opportunity to serve.
This is certainly bittersweet news for me. I just learned it this morning. Mary's leaving us. I envy her. You know, and I'm glad you certainly deserve a fine retirement. The service that you have given to the people of your county. And I've worked with Mary for several years. It was when I was a county official. Although I was a mayor and she held the other office, we would work together through professional associations. And I have a great appreciation for her integrity and her putting constituents first. So we're going to miss you, but go with our best wishes and our gratitude for your service to TACIR. So thank you. Let's thank her.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, when one door closes, another opens, and I also have the pleasure of welcoming our newest member, and this is Crossville City Manager Valerie Hale, who was appointed by the commission by Speaker of the House Sexton on February 4th of this year. Ms. Hale, welcome to the commission. And then the final commission update, I told the members a few months ago that we were pursuing a contract with the University of Tennessee, their Center for Transportation Research. And this is intended to augment our own study on transportation funding. Just wanted to give you an update that contract is final now, and they have started work on that. But because of the timing of it, it will not be complete before our draft report is to you later this year. So I see it as more augmenting the work we're doing and hopefully echoing some of our own research. But I think it'll be an important piece of analysis. And then I have a couple of staff updates, Mr. Chairman. First is this is an exciting one. We have recently recognized Bob Morio as our senior research manager, and this is just in recognition of his excellent work and his excellent potential. And I just want to say congratulations, Bob. And then finally, on a less exciting note, I am actually quite pleased to announce that I myself hit a milestone of state service this past month, where I've now completed 30 years of service to the state of Tennessee. But don't worry, I'm not going anywhere anytime soon. So.
No, you're not. Thank you, Dr. Lippard. And if you don't mind, not to be outdone, you noticed we had our picture made earlier with a plaque that he was holding that was signed by the governor of Tennessee, as it should be, to acknowledge your service, your 30 years of service to the state and through TACIR. But not to be outdone, I have a surprise for you. If I could get the photographer to come around here. I have a proclamation on behalf of the Tennessee Senate honoring you for your service. It is to the Honorable Cliff Lippard in recognition of 30 years of service to the Tennessee Advisory Commission on Intergovernmental Relations. Take this from the Senate and the Tennessee General Assembly. We really appreciate what you and your staff do for us. You provide very fine material that has a great influence on our legislative responsibilities. So thank you very much. Let's thank you, McLean.
Thank you.
You were surprised, weren't you?
I was genuinely surprised, and you can ask the staff. There's nothing I like more than a surprise at a commission meeting.
Yeah, me too. Me too.
I just want to take the opportunity we hope you get 30 more years of service to the state, but your leadership of this organization is remarkable, not just the work you do personally, your entire team, but we also know that you are critical in building that team and recruiting the best types of people to join it and mentoring them. And just really, I think this is immensely important work for the state, and we really appreciate it.
Ditto.
No, it's not. Thank you. In case some of you did miss it, Mr. Pettit is coming forward to present the Tennessee Valley Authority Payment in Lieu of Taxes Annual Report, which will require our approval. You're recognized, Mr. Pettit.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Commissioners. Today, I'm presenting for your approval the Commission's annual report of the Tennessee Valley Authority's payments in lieu of taxes. Those are commonly referred to as pilots, and issues affecting those payments and their distribution to the state of Tennessee and our local governments. The report, which is noted under tab 3 of today's agenda, was made an annual requirement by Public Chapter 1035, Acts of 2010, and pursuant to Tennessee Code Annotated Section 4-10-112, has a statutory deadline of the end of February. There are no recommended actions to be taken by the General Assembly in this year's report, so I'll just take a moment to go over the changes from last year's payments and briefly call your attention to some ongoing issues staff will continue to monitor in the coming year. Beginning on page 4, we report that in federal fiscal year 2024 to 25, TVA's total payment in lieu of taxes to the states it serves was $600 million. And from that, Tennessee received $405 million. TVA's total payments for the current federal fiscal year, which run through September 2026, are estimated to increase $67 million to a total of $667 million, an 11% increase primarily driven by higher effective base rates, increased sales volumes, and higher effective fuel rates. Because TVA's wholesale rate structure separates fuel cost recovery from other base revenue, higher fuel prices get passed on to local power companies and customers, leading to an increase in TVA revenue. It's important to understand that changes in fuel costs in either direction can affect the pilot amount. Lower fuel costs will generate less revenue from fuel cost recovery. Appendix A of our report explains in detail how TVA's revenue determines its total tax equivalent payments. For federal fiscal year 2025 to 26, TVA's payments to Tennessee are estimated to increase by $49 million to a total of $410 million. Table 1 on page 5 shows TVA's distributions to Tennessee by federal fiscal year. On a state fiscal year basis, payments to Tennessee for the state fiscal year that runs through June 2026 are estimated to increase by $39.1 million from state fiscal year 2025. These amounts are different because the state's fiscal year begins on July 1st, which is 3 months earlier than the federal fiscal year. As a result, Tennessee's distribution to local governments and the state for the state fiscal year includes TVA's payments for the last 3 months of the federal fiscal year, when the pilot's increase was smaller. Payments to each county and city for state fiscal year 2024 to 25, along with an explanation of the state's allocation formula, are detailed in the appendices at the end of the report. Before I move on to discuss some developing issues that may affect pilot payments in the future, let me quickly say, in light of our recent cold snap, that while prolonged periods of extremely hotter or colder than normal temperatures can affect the amount and distribution of TVA's payments to the states, individual events are unlikely to have a noticeable effect on pilot amounts. This report mentions TVA's strategies to manage short-term weather-related demand increases on pages 6 and 7. Skipping ahead to page 12, the report says that as TVA continues to rebalance its generating fleet, the resulting changes could cause shifts in the value of power property from state to state and from county to county, which could affect each state's and county's share of TVA's pilot. This dynamic has had dueling impacts on Tennessee's share of the pilot over the last few years. For instance, Tennessee's share of TVA power property decreased 3 years in a row from fiscal years 2020 to 2023, attributable to TVA's investments in Kentucky and Alabama, combined with accelerated depreciation of TVA's Bull Run plant in Anderson County. For the past 2 fiscal years, however, Tennessee's share of power property increased annually because of TVA's investment in its Cumberland and Kingston plants. This dynamic is subject to change year over year based on future developments like TVA's plan to build a new hydroelectric facility in Alabama or further development of the Clinch River SMR site. I'll note now that the report section on TVA coal plant closures will need updating. The TVA board voted on Wednesday to continue operating all units at the Kingston and Cumberland coal plants beyond their scheduled retirement dates. TVA now plans to operate all 4 of their coal plants, Kingston, Cumberland, Gallatin, and Shawnee, quote, as long as they possibly can, end quote. This report will be updated to reflect TVA's new plans, and any potential changes to Tennessee's share of power property and power sales will be reflected in the 2027 version of TACIR's report. Changes in TVA's wholesale power contracts with its distributors can also affect TVA's gross power revenue and, therefore, the pilot. The report describes the effects of these contracts on pages 12 through 15. TVA began offering long-term contracts to its 153 distributors in 2019, and as of September 30th, 2025, 148 have signed these agreements. Rebates to these 148 distributors reduced TVA's revenue by $231 million in federal fiscal year 24 to 25, which reduced the total pilot for federal fiscal year 2024 to 25 by $11.6 million and Tennessee's share by approximately $7.9 million. Provisions included these contracts that grant distributors flexibility to obtain renewable energy from sources other than TVA, either by generating it themselves or by purchasing it from other entities, could also affect payments to Tennessee. At the end of federal fiscal year 2024 to 25, 109 distributors had signed flexibility agreements as part of their long-term partnership contracts with TVA, allowing them to obtain up to 5% of their power from other sources. 16 distributors in Tennessee are currently purchasing power from entities other than TVA under these flexibility agreements. Power purchased at wholesale from these entities is subject to the equivalent payments required by Public Chapter 1035, Acts of 2010. So far, the credits claimed by these distributors have exceeded the payments that would otherwise be owed under the law, and therefore no payments have been required. Lastly, beginning on page 15, the report discusses the possibility that one or more power companies might leave the TVA system. It appears that the prospect of a major distributor leaving the system has diminished, at least for the time being. With that, I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, I thank you and ask for your approval of the report.
If there's no objection, I'll lead off with the questions. I just have perhaps a couple. With regard to the credit that the distributors receive who are buying and selling power in Tennessee against the in lieu of tax that they would otherwise be making, they get credit for the taxes. Are those state taxes that we're referring that they're paying?
Yes,
Or
they would
is
be
it a credit?
taxes otherwise owed to the state that they're receiving credit for, yes.
Say it again.
There are taxes that would be paid to the state.
I know who they'd be paid to, but, okay, all right, but they're levied by the state of Tennessee.
Correct, that's my understanding.
Okay, got it. Thank you. Commissioner Yarborough, Senator Yarborough.
Thank you, and I wanted to follow up on that. I mean, it's a notable thing that we're, sort of 16 years after, and you've got multiple distributors, and like in every case, the credits exceeding whatever, the payment. So just, can you let me know like what credit it is? Like why do we think that is the case?
So as to why we think that's the case, I'd want to read back over our research and make sure that I answered it correctly. And the credit is the distributors are obtaining the power from places other than TVA. And so to ensure that the state is receiving the amount of money that it otherwise would, despite if these arrangements were going through TVA, the contract or the law is set up to still collect that revenue. As for how their revenue is interacting with the credits and the fact that they haven't gone over the cap, I'd want to get more specific details to send to you so that I didn't misrepresent one or more situations.
Thank you. And Mr. Chairman, I guess I'm trying to figure out if it's, if we actually are getting all the information in terms of understanding how much would be owed and sort of, getting whether we're seeing enough accurate reporting to ensure that like the base amount's right, making sure that sort of what the credits are set at, and then like whether we've actually set these rates at the right point.
I think it's, I agree with Senator Yarborough, and I think it would be very useful, Mr. Pettit. Is it possible for perhaps you or the folks who helped you prepare this report, maybe we could find a time to sit down and talk about this? Because I would specifically like to know the taxes that they're being levied, that they're getting the credit against their in lieu of tax payments that they would otherwise be making. I'd like to know what those taxes are. And the senator also had some other questions. So we would like to, if you'd contact my office, then we'd try to set it up. Well, I'd like to see a little bit more about that. Commissioner Thomas.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for the report. Just a quick question. Beginning on page 6, you talked about, at least the report begins to talk about some of the short and long-term strategies for TVA. Notwithstanding the demand for energy anticipated to rise, both notwithstanding with weather-related events, but data centers, things of that nature. We all know the activity happening along the Clinch River. Will future reports sort of look back at some of the short and long-term strategies proposed and how those are impactful? So from year to year, so that we can actually look at the causal impact of some of these strategies as it pertains to sort of staying below that debt limit. Is that sort of embedded into future reports, or will be embedded in future reports?
Yeah, so as events continue to develop, especially with data centers and this increased demand for power in the state, the report will focus more and more on that as the demand increases. And if, as time goes on, those examples we'll look backwards to kind of compare it to the way things have gone in previous years with other increases in demand, like population increases or something like that, or they'll work themselves in, much further down the road to kind of get an idea of our understanding at the beginning and how things have evolved. I think all that will be encapsulated in future reports, and as things, the TVA board just got its quorum back, so we can expect some more activity over the coming year than we've had over the previous year. And the next report will reflect all those changes and possible implications.
Thank you.
Mayor Anderson and then Secretary. Okay, perfect.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a quick question. You had mentioned, you kind of glanced over the fact that we've had a pretty momentous decision now to actually keep our coal plants going. And you mentioned that that needed to be updated. So I'm just wondering, is TACIR actually going to do that?
Yeah, so the language that's in the report regarding TVA's previously planned retirements of the coal plants will be changed to accurately reflect their current plans, as they stated at their board meeting on Wednesday. But any downstream effects, financial figures or anything like that will take until the 2027 report to be reflected the way that it affects the power generating or the assets that the states holds. Instead of the coal plants being retired, they'll still be here. That will be worked into the equation next year, as well as the energy that those plants are creating.
When Commissioner spoke and asked a question about the call centers, I've got two or three. Are the call centers going to be a cooperative of the pilot, or are they going to be nonprofits or for-profits? That's question number one. Number two is, with these data centers that you're putting in direct electricity going to them, will they be figured into that 1937 pilot program that's been put on the books?
So I'll answer your second question first. The data centers, their impact on the power demand in the state of Tennessee and what Tennessee is, or what TVA is providing to the state, will be reflected in the equation. Presuming no legislation prevents that in the coming years. Can I ask you to repeat your first question again?
So the data centers you're putting together, are they going to continue? Are they going to operate under the Cooperative Act, the TVA? There's a difference.
Right. So for the purposes of monitoring TVA's pilots, without looking at the agreements, I wouldn't be able to tell you how TVA is managing those. For the pilot equation, though, the pilot will reflect how much energy those data centers are drawing and what TVA would have paid otherwise.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Are there other questions? Other questions? On page 5, there's a table 1. I had a question about that. I think I know the answer, but I'd just like you to help me here. The line that says direct payment to counties, that is the impact money in that, or is that the in lieu of tax? I'm assuming it's the impact aid.
So I don't have the table in front of me, so if I say
It's
something,
table 1 on page 5 of the report.
yeah, I don't have a copy of the report up here.
Oh, shoot.
It's just,
I believe one's on its way.
yeah, thank you.
She's so good.
No, it is not.
It's not in lieu of tax. It's the impact aid?
So, I see, the direct payments to counties. Yeah, no, it is not.
I appreciate that. At first I thought, what's going for? I'm just going to go through the in lieu of tax, then I realized that you confirmed its impact aid. Those counties where there's construction going on in the county, you get additional dollars for impact. So that's what I was asking about. Are there other questions? Yes, Representative.
Do you expect on the Clinch River side, because of the significant investment being made there, that those impact fees would be dramatic to those county, the county in which it sits?
So the determination about the impact fees isn't made at our level. We would need to talk to TVA about their specific plans, especially as they start to pick up business there, what those impact fees will look like and how much they're planning on doing in that area to support the project. So I don't have a specific expectation for you, but I'd be happy to follow up with TVA and either put you in contact with them or get a statement from them about
Yeah,
that.
based upon the formulary and what's going on with the other impact fees across the state, the sizable investment they're making there in that system could be a large windfall to a local community that they could utilize for a specific purpose related to energy. It would be hoped that they would do that as it relates to power generation, particularly those around the onslaught of data centers. I think it'd be important to know.
That's an excellent question. If, Mr. Pettit, if you could provide the answer and we'll share it with the rest of the members of the committee too, if you, when you get the response ready for the representative. It's a good
Absolutely.
question. Yeah. Other questions or comments, gentlemen, ladies? All right, there being none, no further, I will call for, Chair will move approval of the report. Is there a second? There is a second from Mayor Anderson. I believe we'll take a voice vote.
Yes.
We can take a voice vote on this. So are there any questions? There being none, then those in favor of approving the Tennessee Valley Authority payments in lieu of tax annual reports say aye. Aye. Those opposed say nay. There be no nays. It passes unanimously. Thank you for a very good report, and I'll look forward to your working with our office to set up a time to meet with you. And I think if you'd like to include some of the legislators who asked the questions, we'll do that. We'll make sure that they know about the meeting. All right. Item 4 on your tab is the annual report for Tennessee's public infrastructure needs. This is the final report that will require approval. And Mr. Tyler Carpenter, our research manager, will make the presentation. You are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members of the committee or commission, excuse me. Today I will present the annual public infrastructure needs inventory report for your approval. The report can be found behind tab 4 in your docket book. This year's report includes projects that are or will be in the conceptual planning and design or construction stage at some point during the 5-year period of July 2024 through June 2029. I want to draw your attention to a few points of interest in this year's report. First, if you'll turn your attention to figure 1 on page 9, you will see that the total estimated cost per capita of all needed public infrastructure improvements in Tennessee increased for the 10th consecutive year. In table 1 on page 10, you can see that in this year's inventory, state and local officials report a total need of $82.7 billion, which is about $5 billion more than last year. The categories most responsible for the reported increase in total estimated costs are transportation and utilities and education. Infrastructure needs for transportation and utilities, which includes transportation, utilities, and broadband, increased by $3.7 billion, or 9.6%, and now totals $42.8 billion. Transportation, which increased for the 10th year in a row, continues to make up the largest type of need in the inventory with $42 billion in reported needs. One important factor contributing to the increase in transportation needs this year relates to how bridge conditions are assessed. Historically, bridge needs were determined using sufficiency ratings established by federal guidelines. However, TDOT no longer uses sufficiency ratings established by federal guidelines. Excuse me, I'm sorry. TDOT no longer uses those ratings to determine need. Instead, TDOT has adopted a new approach that classifies bridges as good, fair, or poor based on deck, superstructure, substructure, or culvert condition using a 9-point evaluation scale. Under this approach, a bridge is classified as needing replacement when it scores a 6 or below in any of the categories, or when it carries a posted weight limit. This change in methodology, which first affected the needs in this inventory year, resulted in a large increase in reported bridge needs compared to prior years. Although that increase was partially offset by the removal of some projects that no longer meet the threshold to be designated as a need under this new system. Education needs, which include both K-12 and post-secondary education institutions, increased by $978,000 or 5.2%, and now totals $19.8 billion. Post-secondary education costs increased by $1.7 billion or 22.2%. And K-12 school renovation costs decreased by $77,000 or 1.2%. A breakdown of education infrastructure needs can be found in Table 2 on page 13. The final point of interest I want to highlight is that the percentage of funded infrastructure needs reported at the time the inventory was conducted increased by 0.9% from inventory year 2023 to 2024. As projects move from the conceptual stage to planning and design and construction stages, more funding becomes available. That concludes the overview of the reported needs in the current inventory. And if you would like to see how your county is performing, please look at the county summaries, which follow the overview section. Appendix D contains information on project type and stage of development. And Appendix E contains information related to school districts. And lastly, I'd like to thank the development districts for all their hard work in collecting the information. I also want to thank Madison Thorne and other staff, TACIR staff that have been incredibly helpful in the development of this report. Thank you for your time. I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Well, I'll lead us off with a question, but this regards the construction of roads, the Department of Transportation, which it's at an absolute minimum. It's going to take the Department of Transportation 12 years from the moment the decision is made to build a road before you're using it. And that is an absolute minimum. Candidly, I can give you examples which are much longer. As these numbers, these annual numbers, it's because these projects are being carried on. These numbers these are not estimates of costs. These are actual costs. Is that what these are? Because we're not just repeating the same numbers over and over because it's taken them so long to get a road built. But are these actual dollars being spent or the actual need? Excuse me. I know this is an infrastructure report. Help me out here with this.
Yeah, of course. So the way that the inventory works is we collect information from TDOT each year on the road projects that they have in their inventory, and then we also receive bridge data as well. Everything that goes into the inventory is brought over to the next year if it is not completed in that year. And that next year, if it's everything about that project is updated, the cost, the stage. If TDOT has completed it, then it is taken out of the inventory. Very few things leave the inventory that are not completed. And so there is going to be some carryover year to year. We actually, in the end of the report, I believe it's at the end of the report, we highlight what percentage of projects that were not funded 5 years ago are still not funded in this current year. And we don't have this breakdown in the report, but I can tell you that transportation is, of course, the highest percentage of projects that remain in the inventory at about 90%, which makes sense at a 5-year window because it takes so long to complete a project.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So as you're talking about this partial process carryover, because this is the biggest nut, right? The transportation budget. And I think it alone is over 60 billion at this point. And of course, inflation's going to change that. But I remember a meeting with TDOT a couple of years ago where they were employing, I can't remember the the nomenclature for it, but in business school, we called it just-in-time delivery. It was the idea being that for economies of scale purpose and efficiency, that we would have multiple processes going on at the same time where you were taking advantage of, the economic opportunity to do the paving at this point or whatever. Is that something that they are still doing? And does that impact the way that these things are assessed in as much as we have partial carryover with some things that are actually in process and that you said they only acknowledge it when they're completed?
So I believe that was part of the Transportation Modernization Act to help try to speed up the development of these projects. This is something that I would have to ask TDOT to clarify. I'm assuming that they're doing this, but this also would likely not be reflected in the inventory for some time. I can follow up with TDOT if you would like me to and get you an answer.
And just one more question. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Is this inflation adjusted, or are we looking ahead in terms of and anticipating an average inflation that's over the past 10 years or something?
So in figure 1, we show the last 10 years and we adjust previous years for inflation. We do not project forward. We collect needs for the future, but those dollar amounts, to the chairman's point, which I don't think I addressed, is these are estimated costs. And the final cost will be the actual dollar amount, but that will not come until the project is marked complete.
And I would just add one other thing, and that's great, Tyler, that you added that. One other thing is that the projects themselves, though, are in various phases as they're reported in the inventory, from conceptual to design to under construction. And of course, the cost estimates become better estimates the further along they are in the process.
Thank you, Chairman. With the recent act to try to improve the delivery process, my question is when you look at those projects that the TDOT is considering for P3 projects, I guess, are those projects included here because they're in their list? And if they are able to, this spring, they're supposed to issue their first RFP, do you follow those through their completion or at contract because they have now contracted with a third party to deliver those roads? I guess the question is we're kind of in uncharted territory here, and if they were able to say in August, September contract for a P3 partnership, does that come off at the time of contract or does it come off when it's complete?
That's an excellent question. So the general rule with the inventory is that if the infrastructure is owned by a government entity, then it's in the inventory. We've had a situation where a museum, I believe it was in Davidson County, Davidson County had put in the budget that they were going to help fund the museum, but the museum itself was not going to be publicly owned, and therefore we removed it from the inventory. And so it's a unique situation. As you said, we're in uncharted territory, and it's something that I'll be monitoring. But my assumption is if it's publicly owned, then it would be represented in the inventory. I know local projects, you go out to bid, you hand it over. And so it depends on who owns the infrastructure, because it will have to be maintained, by that entity. And so that's when we
it's
include
my understanding that the right of ways will still be properties of the state, but the improvements will be there. So it'll be an interesting predicament you're in as it relates to next year's draft, particularly as more and more of these in the next 4 or 5 years get contracted to be delivered. Thank you.
Senator Yarborough, I believe, is next, and I believe Ms. Hale's waiting. So, Senator, Ms. Hale.
Thank you, Chairman. Can you clarify how the water and wastewater projects are inventoried? Do they come from SRF or some other priority list?
Thank you for the question. Yeah, so the way that the infrastructure inventory is, the needs are gathered is we go straight to the state. We collect budgeted needs from F&A, and we collect data from TDOT. And then there's a third component, and that's where we work with our development districts, and they will communicate directly with the local governments. And that is where those needs are coming from. One caveat of the public infrastructure needs inventory is that it is all self-reported. And so what we receive is what they have given to us. And so it's coming from the locals is the answer.
All right. Let's see. Senator Yarborough.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and appreciate the work on this because I know it is a massive undertaking and is immensely helpful to have. I had a couple of just kind of technical-ish questions. So, I mean, there's a chart on page 10 of the report that talks about the change in inventory from 2023 to 24, and I sort of note that I think this is a good means of comparison because all of it is infrastructure spending. And so like I sort of think they should in some ways be similarly affected by construction inflation and the like. And so I'm trying to figure out like what the source for the transportation number sort of growing at a faster clip than others, comparisons here. Is it because we're making less of a dent in the needs? Is it because there's something particular about the cost there? Is it something particular about the failure rate? Just, is there anything in particular that's driving that to be slightly ticked higher than other things?
Yeah, excellent question. So transportation is interesting. The first thing I'll point out, and I mentioned it in the presentation, is that the way that we are assessing bridges and considering them to be a need has changed. And so there's a large part of that that's coming from that. There are bridges that previously were considered a need that we had to essentially reverse in the inventory based on this new way of assessing. The other thing I'll point out is, and I can't speak for TDOT, but I can tell you what I see in the inventory, and that is that because these projects are here for so long, the cost estimate that is initially entered will periodically increase or be updated. And those updates can be large. If you know, I mean, it's a $1 million project can quickly turn into a, $5-6 million project over a couple of years. And so I don't know, I can't tell you the exact reason why transportation is growing other than bridges. We've changed the way that we're measuring that. And there are periodic updates to that cost number. And so that's going to grow, especially as projects accumulate over time.
Because it was sort of broken out into a few different buckets, the K through 12 number sort of is striking when you actually add them up. And it's over it's around 10.5, 10.6 billion once you add sort of the need for new schools and existing school renovations, which is just that's a big number that people need to wrap their arms around, because that when we fall short there, it becomes notable very quickly. But I noticed there's been some change, like there was a recent uptick in the on the new school space. I was just trying to figure out, can you help? It actually isn't from 23 to 24. It looks like it was last year, or in the last couple of reports. But can you help me understand what the driver is there?
So, excuse me, I don't have last year's report in front of me. However, I do recall that in speaking with our development district surveyors and some of the schools, is that the metro Nashville area, including counties surrounding, are seeing tremendous growth. and that was driving the new school number. You'll see a decrease this year, and that is almost entirely because of completed projects. So a completed project is a good thing, but it pulls that project out of the inventory, and so that's where you're seeing that $700 million decrease. About $500 million of that is from 10 new completed schools.
Wow.
So.
Okay. Well, I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman. I mean, it's a jarring number when you think about like $11,000 of need for all 7 million of us.
Indeed.
So.
If you would, Mr. Pettit, could you, early in your comments, I think you were answering a question of mine. You referred to a table or section in the report where it showed the length of time that it took to get the project up out of the ground, road infrastructure. Could you refer me back to that again? Because I would like very much to study that a little bit. I've read it, but if you.
So
or you can do it later if it's more convenient to you.
No, I believe I've got I should have the number here in front of me. Give me just 1 second. It would be at the end of the report in the funding section. I may have to get back to you on that. It's not jumping out at me at the moment.
I understand that, and that's
Yeah.
quite all right. I would like to see that
Mhm.
information, but I certainly understand. There's absolutely no problem. Representative Parkinson, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for all the work that you do. The cost increases, how much of that is attributed to us sourcing or having to source from out of the country?
That is not something that would show up in the data that we collect. When we collect information on the cost, the projects, until they get into construction, we don't require an accounting of how they're going to pay for it, and so it's just not something that we would collect in the inventory.
Continue, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for that. What about delays? Are there, or have we looked at it, or are there any delays that are tied to having to source out of the country?
Again, that's not something that I think we would collect. There are times where there details in the infrastructure inventory will require me to follow up and may get some of that information, but again, that's just not a focus of the inventory, so it's not something I can answer directly.
Okay, thank you so much. But if you can find out, I think that would be helpful to a lot of us. I appreciate it. Thank you so much. Thanks, Mr. Chair.
I am ready to bring it to a vote unless there's an additional question or comment, gentlemen, ladies. Okay. And I would ask Mr. Pettit, I am presuming that in the drafting of this report, you consulted the pertinent county and city entities, governmental entities to get your report, and this information is shared with them?
Yes, sir. We work with our development districts to speak with all of the local governments, and a press release is shared with those development districts for all the counties.
All right, thank you. All right, is there any, Dr. Clifford?
And I just want to add that although we have gone almost electronically publishing all of our reports several years ago, this is the one report that we still print hard copies of every year because the development districts like to have hard copies with them when they go out and meet with local officials, and especially when they're working on grant requests and things like that. Yeah.
There being no other questions then, and we're ready to vote on this. We are voting to approve the annual report on Tennessee's public infrastructure needs. And we will use a voice vote. Those in favor of the annual report, say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, nay. Carries. Thank you. Now I ask you to turn your attention to tab 5 on our calendar. Public Chapter 418, Acts of 2025, Housing Juvenile Defenders, the final report for approval. And I believe Ms. Hannah Newcomb, our Senior Research Associate,
Yes.
will make the presentation. Ms. Newcomb, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Commission members. The attached Commission report is submitted for your approval and located behind tab 5. This report was prepared in response to Public Chapter 418, Acts of 2025, which directed the Commission to study the availability of facilities for housing juveniles who have been adjudicated delinquent and placed in the custody of the Tennessee Department of Children's Services, or who have been detained by juvenile courts prior to an adjudicatory hearing, and whether there is need for additional housing, detention, and treatment facilities in Tennessee. In response to members' comments on the draft report, which was presented at the December meeting, staff added clarifying information that Madison County's proposed $70 million juvenile justice center includes space for a juvenile court and clerk's offices, in addition to a 40-bed detention center. Staff also added information on national trends and best practices for the size of juvenile detention centers, which you can find on page 23, as well as the capacities of new facilities planned or recently built in other states. And you can find that on pages 15 and 16. The findings and recommendations of the report remain unchanged. For post-adjudication capacity, the report finds that currently funded projects, when completed, will likely meet the state's capacity needs. The General Assembly has appropriated more than $330 million for 3 new facilities, with their final bed count still being finalized as construction has yet to begin. For pre-adjudication capacity, the report recommends that the state help fund a new juvenile detention center for West Tennessee, provided that a share of the beds in the facility is reserved for temporary placements for juvenile offenders in DCS custody. Beyond these capacity improvements, it would be beneficial to build more oversight into the juvenile justice system. The report recommends that the General Assembly require juvenile detention centers operated by local governments to be licensed by DCS and authorize the Tennessee Commission on Children and Youth, or DCS, to levy financial penalties on pre- and post-adjudication facilities that violate state or federal requirements. Research has shown that alternatives to detention can be cost-effective and reduce recidivism. Increasing access to and use of community-based rehabilitative programming could be beneficial to youth in the justice system and the communities in which they live. The report recommends that the General Assembly further increase recurring funding for the Juvenile Justice Reform Grant Program, and that juvenile courts that don't already use formal detention risk assessments consider using them to guide their decisions about detaining children prior to adjudication. And with that, I welcome any questions that you have and ask for your approval of this report.
Are there questions, ladies or gentlemen? Senator Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for this report. And I do appreciate the fact that you guys are recommending oversight. We don't have any licensing for juvenile detention facilities, which is extraordinary. And we've written legislation to try and find an omnibus or somebody to oversee it. And we just haven't been able to get that over the finish line. But I'm concerned also about how the decision is made about who takes the contracts for building juvenile detention facilities. And I wonder if that was part of your study at all. Did you look into, it seems like there's kind of a lock on a single contractor, and I'm just wondering what that process is. And then I'd also say there seems to be a opacity or a lack of transparency, at least about what the line is between juvenile detention facilities and housing for children under state custody, because we're finding a lot of the time that some of these children are ending up in juvenile detention facilities when they, committed any kind of a crime or indiscretion that should be putting them in that environment. So those are my 2 questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Senator. So in regards to the contracts, We didn't include anything specific about the contracts that the state is, or that local governments are using to build juvenile detention centers. So that's not included in the report. In regard to your second question or comment about the children in state custody that are housed in detention centers or in the hardware secure or staff secure settings, there's some information about that, talking about how when the comptroller did their audit in 2022, they found that there wasn't enough space, both for kids in state custody for delinquency and neglect, and also kids that were in the juvenile justice system. So there's some information included in that report, or in our report, about that topic.
Are there other questions? For Brent? Well, there being none, then we will call this for a vote on this. So we will take a voice vote on it, and on Public Chapter 418, Acts of 2025, Housing Juvenile Offenders, final report for approval. Those favoring approval will vote aye. Those opposed, vote nay. It passes unanimously. Thank you, members, and thank you, Ms. Newcomb, for your very fine report.
Thank you.
All right, we've got tab 6 next, I believe is up. Chapter 445, Continue of Care, our final report, which is likewise here today for our approval. Our presenter will be Dr. Mike Strickland, our research manager. You're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And good morning, Commissioners. As noted, this is the final report on the Continuum of Care, or COCs, in Tennessee, located behind tab 6 of your docket books and being presented for your approval. This report was prepared in response to Public Chapter 445, Acts of 2025, which requested the Commission study the COCs in Tennessee, how they might be improved, and how they might compare to COCs in other states. The draft report was presented for your review and comment at the December 2025 meeting. Staff has added Appendix H, providing further data on point and time counts in other states, but no other significant revisions or additions were made to the report, and the recommendations remain unchanged. Those being: 1, the Commission recommends the General Assembly appropriate funding to COCs that may be used to cover expenses that conventional HUD COC grants do not. 2, the General Assembly appropriate funding to cover the HMIS end user licenses of service providers to incentivize participation in the system by those who are not obliged to report their data by federal grant requirements. 3, the General Assembly appropriate funds for the University of Tennessee Social Work Office of Research and Public Service, or SWORPS, for aggregating HMIS data from all 10 COCs in the state. 4, SWORPS use that data to produce dashboards that make data on homelessness more accessible, including a dashboard to display aggregated data of service needs collected by COCs. 5, that the state reestablish a state interagency council on homelessness with representation from all 10 COCs in the state, as well as state agencies. And finally, that the state ICH, or Interagency Council on Homelessness, once established, redevelop and streamline the state's websites for linking people to homelessness services, while also working with the COCs to develop a common agreed upon set of measures for coordinated entry to test how quickly people in need can locate, reach, and receive services, and then use that information to continually improve coordinated entry procedures. So those are the recommendations of the report, and I am happy to take any questions you may have, but otherwise would ask for your approval.
Commissioner Thomas, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your report. Just a quick question. You mentioned all those that are involved in the continual care for the interagency recommendation, as well as state agencies. Can you identify which state agencies were identified to participate?
That would really be up to the state to decide. That has varied over time. In the past, when the state had an ICH, there were 2 iterations of it. There was some change in which agencies were represented, but for example, Department of Correction, Department of Mental Health and Substance Abuse Services, representatives for TennCare, THDA, and so on.
Based on what your findings are, would it be appropriate for this report to make recommendations about which agencies should, and I understand the discretion, but should there be a recommendation to ensure that we are inclusive of all agencies that can touch not just addressing homelessness, but the prevention of recurring homelessness as well? So I'm just wondering if that's in line with the report.
Well, certainly it's at the discretion of the commission.
Are there other questions? Did you want to comment on, Dr.?
Commissioner, were you wanting to make a motion that the report be amended to include a list of those agencies? And
Thank
if
you for
so-
helping me put it into words. I guess that's what I'm asking for. I make a motion that a recommendation for those agencies be included.
All right, there's a second. Are there any questions about the motion? I don't believe there, Dr. Lippert.
Commissioner, are there any specific agencies that you think staff should include in that list? I want to try to capture those in the motion, and if not, are you leaving it to the discretion of staff based on the previous makeup of the interagency?
Yeah, I think, again, drawing on sort of previous examples, and I'm curious if there were other models studied in other states that can form. I know you mentioned a couple, obviously corrections, mental health as well. Selfishly, I think our department should be included because part of homelessness is making sure people have long sustainable employment. So I think really looking at, I don't want to necessarily cut it off with just a few, because as we uncover maybe some evidence-based practice, there may be other agencies, but I do think there are at least a few of them that should be expressly named, but leaving some room for other agencies to be included as we see a way to sort of substantiate long-term evidence-based practices for decreasing homelessness. I'm not sure how that goes in the motion, but.
Would it maybe something along the lines of to include at a minimum these agencies, but not limited to, giving some flexibility but we would include then in that list then, you mentioned labor and workforce development, mental health, and any other
Yes,
specific?
human services, yes.
Yeah,
I think
okay.
of some of those agencies, and we could talk about at least the minimum of what those could be, and I'm happy to, but this would be just obviously from my vantage point, but again, if we could have the language not limited to, because I'm sure there's other things to be uncovered.
We could work with that.
Yes, we certainly can.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
We have a motion with a second on the floor to add agencies, a list of agencies to the report. Is there any questions on the motion? There being none, those in favor of the motion say aye. Those opposed, nay. The motion to amend carries. All right. Are there other questions or comments? Representative Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you for the report. I just had first of all, let me just say, there are 22,000 kids that are experiencing some level of homelessness in 2023. I think sometimes we look at the data and it's untenable. I mean, to think that there are 2,200 kindergartners who don't have a home just is mind-boggling. I think sometimes we lose the numbers in the data, I guess. I guess my question is of course, we're seeing a snapshot of your work here from one single period. And although the numbers can take your breath away if you analyze them, I guess my thought was, because I can only see really 1 year of data. I wondered if there was a way for us to kind of see a trend, maybe using the same schedule 2 years before or something like that to see. Obviously, one takes 2 points to make a straight line, and I think it'd be important for us to know as we try to figure out, how to meet the need, because we're obviously not doing it. And I just wondered if maybe there was some more data that we could add to try to better see the trajectory, because it could be that it's on a decline and we're doing some things well, or it could be that we're on the cusp of an even bigger problem, particularly since the cost of living has gone up dramatically and we're losing federal funding because perceptively our families are doing better. So if we could do that, I think it would be very important as part of your work.
Dr. Strickland.
Certainly. So we do have some data on that we can include. The specific data on homelessness among children only goes back a few years, I believe, but we do have some other data, specifically what's called the point in time count data. I believe we have some going back to 2010, so we can include that, certainly.
I believe Representative Parkinson and then Senator Yarborough. Representative Parkinson, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you again for the good work. My question kind of, just pigtails or piggybacks off of the Chairman Williams' question or comments. Have we, or is it in the report a forecast of where we may be given the changes that are happening at the federal level in housing, specifically for public housing or vouchered housing, and for what is the changes coming from Health and Human Services to our DHS in regards to benefits and those things? Do we tie any type of forecast or forecasting model possibly of what that may look like, as these changes come into play?
I'm not aware of any particular research that has tried to forecast these numbers into the future. There has been just anecdotally, some discussion among stakeholders about some potential closures in what's called the permanent supportive housing. So that may be occurring sometime this year, but I'm not aware of any particular forecasts about numbers related to the vouchers or public housing closures.
Just quick follow-up. Yeah, and thank you for that. And if I'm not mistaken, because I think there are stricter time limits of the availability for a person to be in public housing and the availability for individuals to receive, certain benefits that are provided by the federal government. And so, it would be good, and I'm not saying to change the report at all, but if there's any way that we could get that information so that we can proactively prepare for, what is to come, especially when you're talking about homeless children. I was one before, a couple times, 3 times actually. And so, I know what it feels like to be in that space. And I would love for us as a state to be prepared for if there is something coming, a cliff coming that we're not aware of. Thank you for that.
We have Richard, Dr. Briggs, excuse me, Senator Briggs, Chairman Briggs.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for this report. I know this is an issue that a lot of our urban areas are struggling with. One thing that that we have to consider when we're addressing the problem, and there's a difference sometimes with people who are homeless because they've lost jobs and because of poverty, and these will be addressed many times, by the children who are homeless, and what Representative Parkinson was talking about, versus those that are homeless due to mental illness and drug addiction. And in many ways, the poverty issue, the affordable housing, the supportive housing is easier to address in those people because they're looking for solutions. Whereas with our mentally ill and drug addicts, that's a whole different issue because many of them they either don't have the wherewithal or they don't want to live in that type of environment. And I think maybe our reports should look at those as 2 separate issues because I think they have to be addressed totally different, just as being lumped together as homelessness.
Do you have any comment, Doctor?
Well, I can just say that having talked with the COCs and representatives from them, they do recognize that they do have a number of different programs and measures which are designed for different subpopulations depending on their various needs. So there is, for example, the permanent support for housing and other options which are more specialized for people who have disabilities or mental illness or things of that sort. So,
Mayor Anderson.
Well, Dr. Briggs, his comments, Mr. Chairman, under the new funding that we've had now for 2 or 3 years on the opioid abatement program, there's really not a tool or mechanism to address that through the opioid, but I do agree with you that that ought to be investigated. And maybe one of our representatives up here could look at some of the funding being applicable to that model of drug use and the homeless use. But right now, that's a hard way to qualify that. Maybe the commissioner can fix that in some way. My other comment is, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to support this, but at the same time, there's nothing mentioned in here at all. We have a IRS code that allows churches to not pay taxes. And this is an excellent example of how they should step up in our individual communities. Now, oftentimes nobody wants to touch base on that because it gets political, it gets all this other thing. But I think it's important that somehow we reflect that they don't pay taxes for a lot of reasons. And here's a wonderful opportunity for these houses of worship that will deal with some of this children being homeless in our schools. In my generation, we've pretty well gone away from adoption homes, but it's just backfilling with homelessness. And they're really the same. They're a different definition. But our boys and girls, we had one in Spring Hill for years and years. Brentwood had one run through the Baptist. Church of Christ Baptists have all done those over the years, but they're kind of evaporating out. And they're kind of saying, government, take care of this. Well, we can't handle all of this. There's just not enough money to do that. So I guess my comment is not really other than to make people aware. Don't forget, there is number one, we need to fix some of the opioid funding that will allow that to get into that. And number two is look at other avenues in government fixing, because we're not very good at fixing things, quite frankly.
Well said and well taken.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I mean, I joined Representative Williams. I was struck by the data. We talk about 23,000 kids who are in one degree of homeless or another in recent years. And I think the data situation, several of the recommendations in the report deal with the collection and assessment of data, which I think makes sense. I understand this is a complicated space because there are 18 different federal definitions and all sorts of different requirements about how to do this. But I wonder if you could, beyond just like focusing on it, what you looked at other states. Some states the state has taken over the information system here. What programmatically should Tennessee do to ensure that we're actually collecting and using data appropriately? What are the best practices, and what are y'all recommending specifically on that front?
So for the HMIS, the Homelessness Management Information Systems, that is something that a number of stakeholders we talk to in other states emphasize there is a lot of benefit to the state having that data, primarily because it gives the state a sort of statewide view of homelessness, which is otherwise it's broken up by the COCs. There's also sometimes a question about possible duplication of services because you can, on occasion, have someone move between COCs. So having that statewide data really helps to solidify that, eliminate gaps in the data, ensure there's no duplication there. So it gives that kind of portrait of homelessness across the state, and then helps to inform if they have, say, a state interagency council on homelessness, that gives them a basis for developing sort of state level policy, which is then more coordinated than just the local level.
Okay. Well, I mean, I do think it's an excellent report. I think this is such a, I think Senator Briggs raised, I think a pretty common question, but I think a lot of sometimes we get the chicken and egg wrong here. Like we think about that homelessness is being caused by these, sort of substance use and mental illness when I actually think that, those things are relatively uniform across the population. Homelessness is not. And what leads people into having these crises in mental health and crises in substance abuse is they're actually like the loss of stability in housing. And, I guess West Virginia has just as much mental illness as anybody else, but they have very low homelessness rates because they have not seen an increase in housing prices. And homelessness is something that I think there are really macro conditions here that really thinking through. I think it's one of the reasons we actually want to understand the data, because I think you will see that and I think it's one of the reasons that people across the state are more and more frustrated when it comes to housing prices, because when people are on edge, it is something that pushes them further and further. But I really just appreciate the value of the report.
Are there other questions or comments, members? Representative Williams.
Thank
Excuse
you.
me, Chairman Williams.
Thank you. I just do think that, I think the mayor's right. I think that, our nonprofits, churches have a duty really to step in and do this. But in my community, it seems to be, and not to oversimplify, it seems to be a third when it comes to adults. There's a third who are choosing homelessness. There's a third who have some kind of mental health or substance abuse problem. And there's a third who experienced homelessness probably like Parkinson or I did. And the facts are those thirds are hard to sort through which third most citizens are in. But there's 17,000 kids who are doubled up at somebody's house as a friend or a neighbor. Those are things where the nonprofit or church community can come in and do it. But even those kids are able to take care of themselves. It's the 3,200 other kids that we can help. These generally are not strided by third. You don't see a third grader struggling with mental health or substance abuse. They're just a victim of the really bad choices probably somebody in their family made. And so it's our job to understand the data, and I appreciate it. It's really good, but also try to create pathways through legislation or communicate with people in our local communities about where the need is. When you take 7.6 million people, I think there are 3,000 Baptist churches in Putnam County, but that's a joke. But the fact of the matter is we could find a solution for this small cohort of people if given the opportunity to do it. But a lot of times the risk and liability is such that no one wants to touch it. And I think that's part of the reason why we were doing that. If we make it a better home situation for these folks, they're going to be better students and they're going to be better citizens for it. So thank you.
Dr. Lippert.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to remind the members that while this study is specifically looking at continuum of care organizations and whether their efficiency in dealing with homelessness, so it's not looking at homelessness in a broader, though you can't talk about it without looking at it to some degree. This study is a little bit more focused on those organizations, but there is a bill out there currently that would be asking TACIR to do a deeper dive into more general issues on homelessness. Now, there's no guarantee that that bill will pass, but just so you know, there is possibility that we'll be taking another dip into the bucket on this issue.
Yes, sir.
One more question before we
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And it's not necessarily a question, but it's really directed to the director. I think that's a very important study. And if this body says that we'll take that study up a broader look at homelessness, then it doesn't even have to go through the legislative process.
Staff serves at the will of the commission.
Yes, sir.
Thank you. And if there being no other questions, then I'm ready to bring this to a vote. It is I need a motion to approve the report. All right, motion and second there. Are there any further comments or questions? There being none, then those in favor of approving the report of Public Chapter 445, Acts of 2025, Continua of Care, the final report for approval, say aye. Those opposed say nay. The ayes have it, and the report has been approved. I will call your attention now, members, to tab 7, the Public Chapter 941, Acts of 2024, Real Estate Fraud. This is the final report available for approval. And I believe Bob Morio, our research manager, is approaching the microphone to make a presentation. And we have witnesses. Dr. Lippert.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, we have individuals who have requested to make commentary, which will come after Mr. Morio's presentation. And just a reminder to the members, public comments are limited to 3 minutes per individual unless the chair grants additional time. And so, but first we'll hear from Mr. Morio.
And let me say to members that, and ladies and gentlemen, I have to leave the room for about 3 minutes, maybe 4. And Dr. Lippert is going to moderate the meeting, but we will recognize Mr. Morio now for his presentation. I'll be right back.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Good morning, commissioners. My name is Bob Morio. It's my pleasure once again to present the commission's report, Protecting Property Owners and Reducing the Risk of Real Estate Fraud in Tennessee, for your approval. It was prepared in response to Public Chapter 941, Acts of 2024, describes the prevalence of real estate fraud in Tennessee, different schemes used to perpetrate fraud, methods used by other states to combat fraud, and best practices for registering documents related to real estate transactions. As it says on the last page of the report, public education and consumer awareness are important, but that alone cannot solve this crisis. I believe our discussions and your feedback have helped the project team develop the report's recommendations as a solid starting point, and I thank you all for your attention to this important and complex problem. The report was first presented to the Commission for final approval at our September meeting, at which time it offered 3 recommendations: to require training for notaries, strengthen requirements for notarization and notary records, and empower registers of deeds with the authority to have real estate documents reviewed when they suspect documents are fraudulent. Those recommendations, found on pages 2 through 5 of the report, have since remained unchanged. I'd like to recognize that legislation to require notary education and better record keeping, including a record of the method by which notaries identify those who sign documents, has already been introduced this session by Senator Paul Bailey and Representative Michelle Carringer as Senate Bill 1946 and House Bill 1923. After questions and discussion among the members at the September meeting, the Commission decided to defer voting on approval of the report until our December meeting in order to accommodate requests for additional recommendations in the final report. Staff conducted additional research and continued discussions with stakeholders and members, and from this ongoing work, 2 recommendations found on pages 5 through 7 were added to the report for consideration at the December meeting. Any areas where information has been added or revised significantly from the version presented in September are still highlighted throughout your materials and in the docket book, but the report as you see it today is the same as it was presented for your approval again in December. That report, however, failed to receive the required 2/3 majority of present voting members, and further action was tabled until today's meeting. Let me first briefly revisit the second of those 2 recommendations added in December, which is found on page 7. This one addresses the idea that tougher criminal penalties could reduce fraud, and that more specifically defined offenses for deed theft and real property fraud could simplify cases for prosecutors and allow the General Assembly to impose tougher penalties for these crimes as a deterrent. The section of the report from pages 17 through 24 explains a variety of tactics and crimes that fall under the category of real estate fraud and how the lack of specific laws and data make fighting these crimes difficult. Information on pages 43 and 44 explain how New York and Texas have recently enacted criminal statutes there to specifically target real estate fraud. And the recommendation on page 7 reflects our belief that these states can serve as an example of ways to provide homeowners in Tennessee with stronger protections and give law enforcement new tools to prosecute deed thieves. Commission members voiced concerns at the September meeting that the report did not include a recommendation for registers of deeds to require identification from individuals presenting documents in person to record transfers of real property, which is something originally proposed in the legislation that later became Public Chapter 941. Before the December meeting, we added more information to the report about laws in Arkansas, Florida, and Texas that require identification from named parties or other individuals who file deeds to be recorded, which you can find on pages 39 through 41. In particular, helpful was the report published by in November by the county clerk's office in Lee County, Florida, which described the successes and challenges of their 2-year ID pilot program. So although documenting the identity of individuals seeking to record real estate documents has been shown to support fraud investigation and possibly deter real estate fraud in these other states, this report acknowledges that implementing an effective identification policy could be difficult and burdensome. Some of Tennessee's registers of deeds remain concerned about taking on additional liability and the burden of securely storing copies of personally identifying information, among other things, and they oppose mandating ID requirement policies for registers statewide. Despite these and other potential challenges, the Shelby County Register of Deeds told Commission staff prior to the December meeting that the county would participate in a pilot program, if one is established, to test an ID requirement policy for individuals seeking to register documents in person in Shelby County. To respect the concerns of many other county registers while also giving interested counties the ability to choose whether an identity requirement policy is an appropriate option to address real estate fraud in their own jurisdictions, we added that recommendation found on pages 6 and 7 to the report in December, which was that the General Assembly should enact an identity verification pilot program modeled after laws in Arkansas, Florida, and Texas, and grant registers of deeds in any county the optional authority to participate in this optional program. As it was presented in December, the recommendation incorporated aspects of those similar laws in several states, including the authority for registers participating in the optional pilot program to require identification from grantors named on a deed or other instrument to convey real property interest, or from any other named individuals when these documents were filed for registration in person or by mail. Based on the discussion at the December meeting and additional feedback from the Shelby County Register of Deeds and others, staff has prepared an alternative pilot program recommendation for your consideration today, which is included in the memo at tab 7. This would only be authorized for Shelby County. While other states have passed and expanded laws to require identification before recording real estate documents outside of Shelby County, there's not been much interest shown by Tennessee's registers of deeds to adopt the practice. This narrower alternative to the recommendation presented in December would authorize the Register of Deeds only in Shelby County to adopt the policy to require identification only from individuals seeking to record documents in person. It suggests an end date for the pilot program and specifies that identifying information copied or recorded would be kept confidential except for use in a criminal investigation or court proceeding. I can read the full recommendation as is included in the memo. To give officials in Shelby County the ability to explore policies intended to address deed fraud within the county's jurisdiction and to help evaluate the implementation and effectiveness of these policies for future consideration, the Commission recommends that the General Assembly establish the Shelby County Identity Verification Pilot Program. Under this recommended program, the Shelby County Register of Deeds would be authorized to require government-issued photo identification from any individual who presents a deed or other instrument to convey real property interest for registration in person, with exceptions being made for attorneys, mortgage lenders, or other real estate professionals. To record the copy of the identification presented with the instrument in the official record book, and refuse to record the instrument if the required forms of identification are not provided. To address concerns that criminals could still commit fraud by presenting fake or falsified credentials, the county could also be authorized to utilize third-party analysis and identity proofing technologies to validate credentials. Under this recommended program, information copied or recorded would be kept confidential except for use in criminal investigation or civil court proceedings. The county register would also be required to provide notice on their official public website that they're participating in this pilot program, along with the full details of the program's requirements. To allow adequate time for implementation and data collection, the Commission suggests that the program end no sooner than December 31st, 2027. Similar to the recent pilot program in Lee County, Florida, after the Shelby County pilot program is expired, the county register would submit a report containing information regarding the number of individuals presenting deeds in person for recording, types of identification cards produced when presenting those deeds, numbers of exceptions granted for real estate professionals, attorneys, and mortgage lenders, the total number of instruments recorded by other means, including mail and electronic records, information on whether the program led to the identification of anyone attempting to fraudulently convey property and the outcome of any criminal charges or civil actions, and any other information that the register deems necessary, including recommendations to improve the program and whether or not it should be continued. Before taking questions, I should mention that Representative Parkinson and Senator Akbari from Shelby County have recently introduced legislation, House Bill 2478 and Senate Bill 2389, to begin the legislative process to create the Shelby County pilot program based on the work in this report. I thank you all again for giving your attention to this important topic for Tennesseans. I hope that the research helps each of you in some way work with real estate professionals, law enforcement, leaders in your communities to protect people from these criminals. I believe we'll hear from guests with comment. I'm happy to answer any questions at this time. Before turning it over, I ask for your approval on this report, whether it is as presented in December or to include this new recommendation. How that works is at the chair and the director's discretion. But thank you.
Thank you, sir. I think what we will do before we take questions as a result of your report, we will hear from the panelists first, and then we will take questions either directed to you or the panelists at one time. And I would repeat what the director has already said, that we really are delighted to have you here, and we'll appreciate your brevity, and because there is a limitation of 3 minutes. And please, for the record, introduce yourself. So we will start here to my left. The gentleman with the very fine orange tie on.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, Honorable Commission. Thank you for having us. I'm Ben Rogers, the Executive Director for the County Official Association of Tennessee. I'm honored to introduce Miss Julie Runyon. She's the Montgomery County Register of Deeds, elected in 2022. And prior to her election, she served and worked as a title attorney. And also Mr. Mark Gravitt, the Hamilton County Register of Deeds, is with us. And prior to his election, a real estate professional and also a former member of the House of Representatives for Tennessee.
Thank you, committee, for having us. Respectfully, many of the TACIR recommendations before you today do not adequately represent the recording practices as required by Tennessee code, nor do we believe it will be an effective fraud deterrent. Moreover, the implementation of said program by the registers across the state of Tennessee will be problematic. The program as proposed provides no guardrails or guidelines. How are the IDs retained? Who has access to the IDs? How do you avoid fraudulent IDs? Registers would potentially be absorbing the recording cost of recording the ID. Whose ID? What about fraudulent documents presented electronically? What are the consequences of refusing to record? The registrar's offices and laws we operate under are uniform across the state of Tennessee. To say the pilot program is optional or that a registrar in a specific county can make decisions regarding how the pilot program operates and the guidelines it operates under flies in the face of the principle of uniformity. Tennessee is among a handful of states that is a race to record state. That means the first to present a document has priority. Therefore, there cannot be a delay in recording. There cannot be a delay based upon the belief that a document may be fraudulent. Additionally, the mechanism and means for recording, such as in-person versus electronic, has to be treated equally. There's no statutory distinction between the method of filing as the program would attempt to do. The pilot references Florida. Florida is not a race to record state. So the same issues that Tennessee is presented with do not apply in Florida. And that program is relatively new. Each registrar across the state of Tennessee wants to do a good job and protect our citizens. We are not afraid to work hard and implement effective policies. However, it's the association's position that there are more viable and effective options. For example, there are several bills before the legislature that might lend themselves to deterring fraud. We support stricter penalties for fraudulent transactions. And moreover, by the time the documents are presented for recording in our office, the fraud has occurred. Therefore, it is the registrar's position that there shall be stricter guidelines for notaries and alternative solutions explored, and I will defer to my fellow registrar to elaborate on that.
May I, Mr. Speaker? Thank you.
Yes, you're
Thank you.
recognized,
Thank you,
sir.
Chairman. Sorry, Speaker, Chairman. It's been 7 years since I've been up here, so it takes me a little bit getting used to.
Sir, at times I've been called a lot worse. Don't worry about it.
Thank you for allowing me us to address you all again. We know that you all have been dealing with this now for several months here. So I'm just going to jump right into it. In recent media comments, it was stated the law does not require an ID when you're, doing a property transfer. Unfortunately, that is not an accurate statement. As you know, the entire premise of notarizations is that a notary public has verified the identity of the individual signing the document before it ever reaches our counter. That step is the legal safeguard, not the registrar's. Notaries are required to see an ID before notarizing a document. If that identification process is being bypassed or misused, the solution should be aimed at strengthening notary accountability and standards, not shifting that responsibility onto registrars. In fact, notaries are mentioned right from the start of this report on page 1, as well as throughout this report. It is stated many, many times of the vital role notaries play in maintaining the integrity of real estate transactions. So much so that notaries are mentioned 267 times. Registers are mentioned 59 times. It is also stated in this report how few requirements are for receiving a notary license in Tennessee. According to this report, 30 states require either training, an exam, or both for an initial notary commissions for regular in-person notary services. 18 states require continuing education to renew notary commissions. Effective only this past month, Tennessee has begun requiring online remote notaries to complete training and pass an exam. However, neither training nor an exam is required to become a traditional in-person notary. I'm assuming everyone knows what the difference between an online notary is and an in-person notary. Online is where you have a camera and a microphone. You're not physically in the same presence as that person. The most shocking of all being that Tennessee does not require criminal background checks for notary applicants. Notaries are the people entrusted to confirm that individuals are who they say they are. It has also been stated in the media, the Tennessee Registrars Association is opposing anything that would provide accountability in the registrar's office. So it's from the point of them doing additional work. Unfortunately, again, neither one of these are accurate statements. Register clerks are not attorneys, therefore cannot legally question a document as long as it meets state recording requirements. As stated on page 4, the University of Tennessee Code Technical Assistance Services cautions, quote unquote, the registrar should not try to determine the legal sufficiency of an instrument, but must determine whether or not it is acceptable for registration. Additionally, on page 4, according to an opinion from the Office of the Attorney General of Tennessee, quote unquote, unless there is a specific statute that provides an exception to the requirement that the Register of Deeds register all deeds entitled to registration under the law of the state promptly and correctly, the Register of Deeds must file the deed. For as long as I have been in the register position, CTAS has stated our office should not provide documents to anyone. This is a copy of a quitclaim deed that is on a county register website. It is in PDF form. It is in Windows form. Someone should file a bill prohibiting Register of Deeds from providing these blank documents. This is like if a burglar wants to break in your house, you walk up to them and give them the keys. If someone wants to if they want to commit property fraud, okay, here's a blank document. Just fill this out and I'll record it for you. That makes no sense. The registers are working with all stakeholders, land title associations, the state bar, mortgage bankers associations. The county registers work hard. However, as the attorney and CTAS have stated, we are not attorneys nor law enforcement. We are essentially librarians. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Could our Mr. Morrell, do you have any comments? I have a question for you, sir. The comments that we've heard today, did you interact with the Register of Deeds and the association that represent them as you prepared this report? Did we hear from them? Or are we hearing some of this for the first time today?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. When the research began, interviews were conducted with registers early on. There's footnotes and mention of that.
Yes.
In the section in here. Since this has been ongoing with some debate back and forth, we've followed up and had some additional conversations and tried to respond to questions and discussion that's been before the body here.
All right. All right. Now, do we have any questions from members? I would imagine that we do. Representative Parkinson and Chairman Briggs. I'm in a conversation over here to the side with the members. So if the director would mind moderating until I get back to the mic, because I don't want to uphold these. This is an important issue.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And thank you all for being here. Appreciate you. And thank you for your report. Director, I'm the author of the legislation, so I may have a few questions. So just FYI. Okay. I do I guess I should start with if there is a pilot that is done specifically in Shelby County, is there any cost to that any of the other registrar's office have to bear in it?
It's not so much the cost as the cohesiveness of our offices. I equate it to if one county sheriff follows that county's own laws, but Hamilton County Sheriff follows their own laws. That's one of the reasons why we are opposed to this. All of our offices, all 95 counties, we follow the same codes. So with title companies and banks and public citizens throughout the state. So once you throw a wrench into, well, one county wants their own rules, that tends to skew the issue.
And I would note on that, if you provide this option for Shelby County, the other counties are going to have to take, in my opinion, a hard look at the program. Because if fraud occurs and we didn't participate in such a program, if it's available, then that's an issue. So I don't feel like this is just limited to Shelby County.
What kind of liability would that place on the rest of it?
Excuse me, if you guys don't mind, because a lot of other people have questions. I want to try to keep it as brief as possible, if at all, and with all due respect, honest. So with there's no cost to any of the other counties for Shelby County to choose this. Also, if the argument that if Shelby County does it, we will bear or possibly face embarrassment because we're not doing it is, I think, is a little sketchy. Also, the idea that in regards to uniformity of the law, we're talking about a pilot to improve the law. And we do pilots up here, and you've been here before, Representative. We do pilots in areas all of the time, actually every year as we pass legislation. And when we do those pilots in other areas, that means it's creating a difference in that one area where the pilot is taking place versus the rest of the state. And so there's been many pilots done in different communities, different parts of the state that did not happen in Shelby County. So lack of uniformity that you're speaking of, that's a regular practice up here for pilots. The pilot is not the final law. The pilot is the exploration of what we can do to improve the quality of lives of citizens of our state. And if we find that it works, then maybe there may be some application. If we find that it doesn't work, then there won't be any application. But we have to see what works in order to safeguard the theft of people's largest investment. The other thing I want to ask is this. There was talk about notaries, and rightfully so. We do have to strengthen our laws to ensure that our notaries are operating with prudence and operating with integrity. I think we agree on that, right? So I'm happy to agree with you on that. However, the theft does not take place with the notaries. Let me say that part one more time. Just hear me. The theft of the property, the theft of the real property does not take place with the notaries. The theft takes place when that property is transferred. That's the theft. That is the theft. I can be a fake notary and notarize a quitclaim document until I'm blue in the face. That property has not transferred. That property does not transfer until they walk into your office or send it into your office and you actually make the transfer. You are the last stop for an individual to be able to avoid having their property stolen. You're the last stop. That you are actually the individual that actually makes it a theft. I'm not blaming you now. So let me be clear, and members, I'm not blaming them. What I'm saying is, it's not a theft until the property transfers into somebody else's name. That is the theft. That notary notarizing that document is not the theft. And so my point is this. If you're the last stop, does the registers have or own any responsibility at all in the transfer or the false transfer of an individual or family's legacy, heirloom, gateway to generational wealth being stolen from that family? Do y'all have any responsibility in it?
So first of all, I'd like to reiterate that recordability does not equal legally sufficient. We record documents daily that meet the recording requirements and are not legally sufficient. So if a deed is fraudulent or not legally sufficient, the property does not transfer. It may create a cloud upon which litigation may ensue, but it would not effectuate a transfer of the property.
If I may, Mr. Chair, if I may, he packed a lot. He packed a lot in that short statement. I disagree with you because the minute that paperwork is signed, a crime has been committed before it reaches our office because there is marketable and equitable interest in that property already before it ever reaches our office. So we would have a difference of opinion there.
Thank you.
And also, it's not an embarrassment for us, but this would create a liability for the other 94 counties should we choose not to participate in it, which, by the way, I was asked last month when I was here if all of the rest of the registers feel about this. I did a survey, SurveyMonkey. I learned how to use SurveyMonkey, okay? Every one of the Register of Deeds, except for one in this state, is opposed to this legislation.
Thank you. And this would be my last question for now. Except for one, is the county with the most property thefts. Also, you mentioned, and this may be an alley-oop for you, I don't know, but you mentioned that, about the quitclaim deeds being able to be downloaded, and it's from Shelby County, so we own it. Now, but let's say quitclaim deeds were not available on the Shelby County, quitclaim deed forms, let me rephrase that, were not available on the Shelby County website. Where else do you get quitclaim forms from?
You can go online and find them in other sources.
That's my point. Thank you, sir. And so, but if we require quitclaim forms to only be given to clients from attorneys, would you agree, it would increase the cost for someone trying to transfer a property via quitclaim deed? Am I correct?
It would increase the cost. However, again, I'd reiterate, most of the deeds that I get that are prepared by a property owner and not an attorney are, there's questionable as to whether they're legally sufficient and do what the drafter, who is the owner, is attempting to do. Additionally, many of the deeds that were presented to us for review that have been asserted as fraudulent, many of them were lacking recording requirements according to our guidelines.
Thank you. I truly appreciate y'all's feedback and interaction. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
I believe, Commissioner, you were waiting for the floor, did you? Okay, yes, ma'am.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you for your report. Just a fairly quick question. I hope it's fairly benign. On page 16, it's annotated that Tennessee registrars are not required to notify property owners if a document is filed on their property. However, there are free email alerts, and it was annotated that most Tennessee counties offer these free email alerts. Just curious, out of the preponderance of about 95 counties, can we get a take of what's most, how many counties offer that to citizens?
Thank you for the question. I think I would yield to the guests that we didn't have a survey of everybody, but.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, ma'am. To the best of my knowledge, I'm Hamilton County. We have our own property fraud alert system in-house. There are two major third-party vendors that work with registers, Progress, I3 Vertical. There's a couple of other ones out there. To the best of my knowledge, all 95 counties have access to this property fraud alert system.
Okay, so I guess that would need to be sort of a update to the report, because availability to Tennessee citizens for all 95 counties, is that accurate?
I would again yield. It sounded like you said that all the counties have access to it.
Okay.
So as far as is everybody actively using it, or to what extent, it would take some further looking into.
Okay, well, so I want to be careful here, because I'm not necessarily talking about the utilization of it, but it just listed that in most Tennessee counties, property owners can sign up for free email alerts. So I think it sounds like all counties have availability, whether or not it's utilized or not. So I would just make that just as an update to the report, because I think that's very telling. Thank you.
Ms. Gaither, you're recognized.
Can you hear me? Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Mr. Mario, for the report. I really appreciate that. You've done a great job. I have to respectfully disagree with Representative Antonia Parkinson. The fraud actually occurs at the time of the notary. And when there needs to be stiffer penalties for the notary. So if there's stiffer penalties for the notary, in turn, the Attorney General's office would be able to investigate and prosecute the notaries. If you handle the problem with the notaries, then you're going to handle the problem, because the Register of Deeds, they are record keepers. You know, they do an outstanding job. All 95 counties do an outstanding job as Register of Deeds. Very proud of all of them. And I feel like the report needs to be deferred, because we need to have all stakeholders get together and work this out. We need to have the legislature, in my opinion, have much broader and stiffer penalties so that law enforcement, so the DA's office can prosecute them, and that would deter fraud. And so I'll make a motion to defer the report.
Okay, multiple seconds. Keep it brief, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And I meant that respectfully, Representative.
Right, yeah, no problem. No offense taken. And thank you for your comments, and thanks for calling my name because I want to speak again anyway. I'm just kidding, but I do agree with you. I think we all are in agreement that there needs to be stiffer penalties and some real hard checks on the notary. So we're on the same page on that. I disagree with you that the theft happened there, forgery may have happened there, but the property didn't transfer. And so that's our only disagreement in that. So, but I'll leave it there. But thank you for that. So we're on the same page. Somewhat.
I have a comment or two to make, but Dr. Lippard's asked for the floor. Dr. Lippard, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to remind the members that though most of the discussion today has been on the pilot program and on the registers. The report does address and extensively address notaries and makes several recommendations that have already been introduced as legislation this year. The requirement that the notaries receive training, the requirement that the notaries require a proof of identification, because just to correct one of the speakers earlier, you're not required, I'm a notary, you're not required to see an ID if it's someone that's an acquaintance, someone that you know. Is it, some of my friends, I don't know. But no, so it's unlikely that's going to be a place for fraud, but it is one of the things that we identified in best practices from other states and from associations to require that you have not only have identification from everyone you're notarizing a document for, but that you're required to record it in a formal journal, things that most notaries do already anyways, but just to tighten up the process. Will it stop all fraud? Probably not, but will it provide some record keeping when the fraud is eventually discovered and make it easier to prosecute? And on that's my final point, Mr. Chairman. We also do recommend in the report that that the state have specific penalties in the code. All of these crimes are already covered by the code now, but by making the crimes specifically covered in the code, I think that would get at some of what County Clerk Gaither was saying. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Director. If I may, if there's no objection, I do want to offer some comments on the issue. I came here today, I've read the report, I came here today ready to vote for this because it was a pilot program that applied to one county who had asked for it. However, I've changed my mind in light of the testimony that I've heard today, and I'm really concerned that in fixing a problem, we may create other problems and which might require us to maybe drill down just a little bit longer and look at this to make sure that we don't have unintended consequences because of what we're doing. So I plan to support the motion to put it off or defer it to the next monthly meeting with the request that the staff work with us to, and I guess, is the staff able to, with the time, to work with us to address some of the issues that were raised today? Can we do that? And I don't want to keep putting this off over and over and over. We need to take a position on this, but this is a very serious matter because it is a widespread issue that affects every county. And I just don't want to create a problem by trying to fix one.
As always, and I would yield to Dr. Lippard, the staff is prepared to serve at the pleasure of
We just need your help because we're going to have questions, sir, and we just need your help on this.
Yeah, and like it was mentioned that there are some of the recommendations in some parts of the report that haven't really sparked further debate. That
I agree, and perhaps perhaps we will bring that out at the next meeting in that discussion. Mayor Brown, you're recognized.
Thank you. I suspect that in time, technology will solve a lot of the issues. And I know that last time I talked about the systems like ID.me, but I've also since then thought about, when you go in a convenience store or liquor store and you buy alcohol, they don't check your ID, they scan your ID. And so I think that works much like LPRs where it records it. They could go back and get it if there's an issue, but it's not somebody stealing an identity by looking at your license or something like that, or taking on a burden that I understand that the registers don't want to take on. But it is really concerning me. While I definitely agree that notaries should have training and should have responsibility, if I were going to try to steal property, I'd order a notary seal from online and submit that, because that is where I see that the disconnects can happen. And so that you get something that looks notarized, you don't have any verification that that's an actual notary in the state of Tennessee. Or if you're getting it from out of state, how the heck would you know? And so I wish almost that, like I said, I think technology will solve these issues sooner rather than later. But to me, it seems like there should be a living database of approved notaries
Yeah.
that and I know they try to shut down ordering the stamps by mail, but I guarantee you that as soon as one gets shut down, another one stands up. And so I think those are two things that I think we've spent a lot of time trying to make it better, and it certainly does need to be made better, because everything you said about the theft of real estate is so substantial. But I don't think all of the solution can be in the notary's responsibility, nor all in the registers, but there has to be. And I would say that technology is there to make this better. And identification and proof of identity has to be some piece somewhere. That's all.
Mr. Peach, you're recognized, sir.
Just be really quick. I'd just like to say, I get what they're saying is that I think the best thing would be is to have a comprehensive list of notaries that was live time, because otherwise the notary could be doing everything right if the person that's submitting the deed is doing something wrong. That's what's going to put the cloud on the title. And so you're not going to fix anything that way.
Other questions? There's a motion on the floor to defer this to the next regular meeting. Is that good for you? Any other comments, questions? I'm going to try for a voice vote on this. Those in favor of the motion to defer this to the next regular meeting with the request that the staff address some of the issues that were raised in the debate. And Dr. Lippert and I will work together to make sure everybody is connected with that, any subsequent meetings. But there's a motion to defer to the next regular meeting. Those in favor of that motion say aye. Aye. Those opposed to the motion say no. The motion to defer carries. Thank you. And thank you for your presentation. Obviously, a lot of work has gone into this, which we recognize and appreciate. Thank you, panelists. Let me see what we got. My goodness. All right. Okay, well, you're up. The next tab is the tab on cosmetic. Is that
Barbering.
Barbering. You want to save that one? I thought you might. Okay. I call your attention to tab A, Public Chapter 102, the Acts of 2025, Cosmetology and Barbering Professions, the draft report for review and comment. And our research associate, Cameron Fox, will make a presentation. Did represent?
He's just speaking to someone. He'll be right back.
Oh, okay. All right. Cameron, excuse me, Ms. Fox, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good morning, Commission members. I'm presenting the draft report on the barbering and cosmetology professions for review and comment. The barbering and cosmetology industry is growing in Tennessee, but the extent of growth and the industry's economic impact is unknown. Because of this, Public Chapter 102, Acts of 2025, directed Commission staff to study the economic effect of the cosmetology and barbering professions in Tennessee, including the revenue generated through services provided and retail sales, the number of jobs generated by the professions, training and education opportunities, and potential barriers to entry into the industry. The report identifies and focuses on two nationwide trends: growth in the industry and specialization within the industry, and makes one recommendation. We will present the final report at the spring 2026 meeting. The barbering and cosmetology industry, which includes services like basic hair, nail, and skincare services, along with specialty services, is growing both nationally and in Tennessee. According to the Tennessee Department of Revenue and the Board of Cosmetology and Barber Examiners, between fiscal years 2018-2019 and 2023-24, Total salon industry revenues in the state increased 35.6%, totaling $1.1 billion in fiscal year 2023-2024. Business gross sales revenue and local tax revenue from beauty supply shops, barber shops, beauty and nail salons, and barber and cosmetology schools have increased, along with license fees collected by the State Board of Cosmetology and Barber Examiners. Table 1 on page 2 shows a summary of estimated revenue, and Table 2 on page 3 shows that the number of barber shops, beauty salons, employees, and wages have all increased. Increasing enrollment in graduates at Tennessee College of Applied Technology barbering and cosmetology programs reflected growing interest in the professions and courses offered. The Tennessee Board of Cosmetology and Barber Examiners regulates the industry in Tennessee by issuing licenses for cosmetologists, instructors, estheticians, manicurists, natural hairstylists, hair braiders, eyelash specialists, cosmetology shops, master barbers, barber technicians, barber instructors, barber shops, and barber and cosmetology schools. Those wanting to work in the industry can complete either the 1,500-hour master barbering or cosmetology curriculum, which authorizes them to provide most services in the industry, or by completing a separate focused curriculum that has been established for certain disciplines within the industry, such as an esthetician, manicurist, or natural hairstylist license to obtain a specialty license. Both the traditional and specialty licenses require passage of a theory exam and a practical exam to obtain the license. Like other states, Tennessee has adapted to evolving specialization in the industry by establishing specialty licenses. The state has not established a specialty license for one popular service in particular, hairstyling. Tennessee does have a natural hairstyling license, but a hairstyling license would encompass both natural hairstyling and chemical hair-focused services like cuts and coloring, rather than only natural hair. In an industry that is becoming increasingly specialized, it could be beneficial to have this type of specialty license reflected in the state's licensing structure. There are currently 16 other states that have separate hairstyling, hair designing, or hairdresser licenses, with the number of required hours ranging from 600 to 1,650 hours. The average number of hours is 1,000. A specialized hair license would allow people to focus on their interest, save money and time on education, and begin working more quickly. Therefore, the Commission recommends the state establish a hairstyling license focused only on hair-related services that require fewer hours of education than the existing cosmetology and master barber licenses. This concludes a summary of the draft report. We welcome your questions, suggestions, and input as we finalize the report. Thank you.
Thank you. Do we have questions or comments for the presenter, Representative Parkinson?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I was actually prepared to defer to these ladies first if they had questions. But I will, first of all, let me tell you thank you for your report and for the great amount of communication. I know you all talk to a lot of people. I do want to point out again the numbers. And I also want to point out the reason why, I was wanting this study done. I think that in our efforts to look at, going back to Governor Haslam with the Drive to 55 and in our efforts with Governor Lee and his agenda for having, more people, that are actually professionals in our state and so on and so forth. I think we were missing what is one of our biggest industries in our state. And I don't know if you can compare. I'm not going to actually compare, but looking at the numbers, 1.8 billion, I'm sorry, totaling $81.8 billion in 2022, and we're in 2026 now. I want to commend the Tennessee legislature, both the House and Senate, on the efforts that we have made and the legislation that we've passed in creating these specialty schools, also along with the apprenticeship models that we've allowed the schools to do also, but because that wasn't mentioned in this report or in her statement. The apprenticeship model allows a student to go to school for half of those hours, take their theory and book portion of their test, and then allows them to go to work while they are finishing the second half of their hours in the school. What this does is it allows them to be able to generate income to continue to pay for the school or finish paying for the school. And it also allows them to find job placement while they're working, in real time in these salons. This industry is, I think, let me go back to the numbers. I think you said it's growing, what did you say, 35%, or am I messing it up? Or has had an increase. I think it was, I'm looking at it, let me see, make sure I get this right. Total revenue was 1.8 billion in 2022, a 38.5% increase from 2019. And remember, these are 2022 numbers, and now we're in 2026. I really think that it's important that we look at this industry and how, and I don't know if it's in the report or not, where are the areas that the state is missing opportunities to collect the tax revenue on, the things that are coming out of this industry. And looking at the table on page 2, where it shows the state and local taxes of fiscal year 18-19, 35 million, fiscal year 23-24, 75 million. How can we, ensure that the state is able to, generate the accurate amount of taxes coming from the business? And lastly, what can we do as a state to incentivize more opportunities in this business while also still continuing to keep citizens safe, when they patronize these businesses? Because we are talking about people who are having contact with other people's skin, nails, hair, eyes, so on and so forth. Thank you for that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Are there other questions? Did you have any comment to that, or? All right. Are there other questions? Now, I believe this is just the draft report on this particular subject, and we're not taking, does not require a vote, just review and comment. Are there any other questions? Then the final report will require a vote. Will there be no further questions? Then we will move on to tab 9, which is Public Chapter 416 of the Acts of 2025, Speech Therapy Services. And this is as well a draft report for review and comment. And Ms. Jennifer Arzate, our Senior Research Associate, will present. Ms. Arzate, you are recognized, ma'am.
Good morning, Commission members. My name is Jennifer Arzate, and I'll be presenting on the Commission's draft report on speech therapy services for your review and comment. You can find a copy of the memo and the draft report under tab 9. This report was prepared in response to Public Chapter 416, Acts of 2025, which directed the Commission to study the feasibility and effects of implementing the changes to insurance coverage for speech therapy services included in Senate Bill 231 by Senator Akbari and House Bill 296 by Representative Love. As originally filed, the bill would have required state insurance plans, including the State Group Insurance Program, Affordable Care Act plans, or ACA plans, TennCare and Cover Kits to cover speech therapy services for both habilitative and rehabilitative stuttering therapy, without age or visit caps or utilization requirements. Stuttering is a speech disorder characterized by disruptions in the flow of speech, often beginning in early childhood. For many individuals, stuttering is a chronic and variable condition that requires ongoing, individualized treatment to manage symptoms and maintain fluency gains over time. Clinical guidance, including recommendations from the American Speech Language Hearing Association, emphasize that treatment duration should be driven by individualized needs. However, provisions within some insurance plans, including utilization review and visit limits, may result in interrupted treatment, limiting progress and affecting individuals who need consistent therapy. By eliminating utilization reviews and visit limits, the bill would have reduced the likelihood that insurance claims would be denied, reducing direct out-of-pocket costs for individuals receiving stuttering therapy. Despite the original bill's potential benefits to individuals seeking therapy for stuttering, the policy changes proposed in it raised some concerns. There is no comparable therapy service or similar condition that is exempt from utilization review. Insurance companies use utilization reviews like prior authorization and medical necessity not only as administrative tools to control costs, but also to ensure policyholders receive consistent, medically appropriate care. Removing these reviews could potentially lead to higher and less predictable costs, increased risk of overutilization, reduced oversight and accountability, and greater variation in care that may ultimately affect premiums, public spending, and equitable access to services. Moreover, under the ACA, each state selects an essential health benefits or an EHB benchmark plan that defines the minimum coverage required for ACA plans in that state. If a state makes a legislative change to the coverage requirements for ACA plans, and those changes increase the cost of ACA plans, then the incremental cost increases must be covered by the state or a process referred to as defrayal. As originally filed, the bill would have resulted in defrayal, meaning that Tennessee must make up the difference that would otherwise be federally subsidized. And because of these concerns involved in eliminating utilization reviews and making legislative changes to minimum coverage standards for ACA plans, the draft report does not recommend the bill as originally filed. But there is an existing administrative process through which states can make changes to their EHB plans, which importantly would avoid defrayal and could be used to increase minimum visit limits for all habilitative and rehabilitative therapies, including but not limited to therapy for stuttering. Tennessee's current EHB requires ACA plans to cover at least 20 visits per year for habilitative and rehabilitative services. And while insurers may choose to cover more visits, commission staff are aware of only one insurer in Tennessee whose ACA plans cover more than the minimum. Because visit limits are one of the primary reasons speech therapy claims are denied, and because public programs in Tennessee, including the state group insurance program, TennCare, and Cover Kids already provide coverage for medically necessary therapies with either no limits or higher visit limits, increasing the minimum number of therapy visits required under ACA plans would help ensure more equitable access to care. To achieve this without triggering state deferral costs or disrupting standard insurance practices such as utilization reviews, the draft report recommends that the Tennessee Department of Commerce and Insurance update Tennessee's Essential Health Benefits EHB benchmark plan for ACA plans to increase the minimum annual number of speech therapy visits each plan is required to cover. But in conversation with the staff at Commerce and Insurance, we found that selecting a new EHB plan would adopt all coverage requirements of the selected plan, so it would be beneficial for the state to consider how broader changes to the essential health benefits, not just for speech therapy, may affect cost and coverage. This concludes my presentation on the draft report, and I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Are there questions for the presenter? Any questions or comments? Well, thank you very much for your time and the obvious effort you have put into this. Thank you. I will take you now to tab 10, which I believe is the ambulance service. The public chapter 413, the Acts of 2025 ambulance services, an update. Mr. Nathaniel Pettit. Am I pronouncing that correctly, sir?
No, you're nailing it.
Okay, thank you. One of our fine research associates is recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good, hello again, commissioners. Today I'm presenting an update on commission staff's work on the ambulance services study, which is public chapter 413, Acts of 2025. It requested a TACIR study of the economic impact of required ambulance services on counties, how Tennessee's counties and municipalities provide such services, and whether policy changes may improve the provision of these services. Additionally, the Act requires the Commission to review emergency and non-emergency transport reimbursements and to determine how counties and municipalities fund the deficit in which these services operate. I'll begin by discussing what we've learned about how ambulance services are provided in Tennessee. In 2021, TCA Section 7-61-102 was amended to require each county to have at least one licensed ambulance, which can be operated directly or by agreement with another county, city, or private entity. All 95 counties provide ambulance services as required by law. Although not required, 11 cities also operate an ambulance service, and you can reference the map in tab 10 for details. In addition, there are federal ambulance services, transport-only non-emergency ambulance services, helicopter ambulance services, and even one airplane ambulance service. Counties may choose to provide non-emergency transport and helicopter services and the like, but state law does not require that they do so. As for how counties and municipalities fund these services, funding types and processes vary. Commission staff surveyed county ambulance services to collect funding information. Of Tennessee's 95 counties, 52 counties responded to the survey, 36 that operate their own ambulance service, 12 that contract with a private provider, and 4 that utilize an interlocal agreement. Preliminary analysis of that survey data shows that many counties provide general fund dollars to ambulance services to supplement reimbursements from Medicare, TennCare, commercial payers, direct pay, and other sources. That funding has increased in recent years as operating expenditures increased more than reimbursement revenue, both for counties that provide ambulance services directly and for those that use another county, city, or private entity for their service. Cities without an ambulance service also contribute funds, property, or additional support to the county's ambulance service. For example, several small cities around Hamilton County bought into the county's ambulance service, and Greenville pays 30% of Greene County's service costs. Sumner County and the city of Portland pooled funds to create a joint fire and EMS station. In addition, many cities operate fire services, which regularly respond to emergency calls before an ambulance arrives. Some cities, like Mount Juliet and Germantown, fund and operate their own ambulance service. For those cities, commission staff continues to follow up on survey responses to gather more detailed financial information. Most reimbursement funding comes from ambulance transport. Public and commercial insurance partially reimburse ambulance services for emergency transport to hospitals and for pre-approved non-emergency trips. Together, those make up about 89% of ambulance services trips. Tennessee's Triage, Navigate, Treat, and Transport program, also called TNT2, which is operated by TennCare, provides limited reimbursement funding to emergency service providers like ambulances for treating a TennCare insured patient without transporting or for transporting a patient to an alternate destination like a mental health clinic. According to Commission staff survey of county ambulance services, most patients transported by Tennessee Ambulance Services were insured by Medicare, about 49% of patients, or TennCare, about 13% of patients in fiscal year 2023 to 24. To supplement reimbursements from insurance, Tennessee currently taxes ambulance services $20 per transport to provide state matching funds for the Ground Ambulance Assessment Program, and then draws down $229.50 in federal funding per transport of a patient insured by TennCare. We dug further into the funding process for both public and contracted services. Of the counties that operate their own ambulance service, 36 counties responded to the Commission staff survey, and 21 of those counties reported financial data. Preliminary analysis of that data shows that for these ambulance services, average annual operating expenditures increased by 30%, while reimbursements increased 17% from fiscal year 2019 to 20 to fiscal year 2023 to 24. As a result, the average deficit increased to $3.2 million in fiscal year 2023 to 24, about 40% of operating expenditures. You can reference Figure 2 and Tab 10 for the yearly details. Many of the counties that use county, city, or private entities for their ambulance services have increased funding for the services in recent years as well. For example, Murray County officials said Murray Regional Medical Center, the hospital that operates their ambulance service, recently requested the county increase its annual payment to them from $635,000 to $4 million. The parties ultimately settled on a $2 million annual payment. Of the counties contracting for ambulance services, 12 counties that contract with a private provider and 4 with an interlocal agreement responded to our survey. Preliminary analysis shows that their average payment to contracted providers increased from $255,000 to $464,000 from fiscal year 2019 to 20 to fiscal year 2023 to 24. To inform future discussion of policy changes and obtain information on the demand for and operation of ambulance services, Commission staff sought detailed data from the Office of Emergency Medical Services. Their staff provided Tennessee-specific data out of the National Emergency Management Service Information System, called NEMSIS, on response times, trip types, and transport destinations for licensed ambulance services in Tennessee from 2021 to 2024. Data of Tennessee's ambulance services presents a varied picture of service demand and provision across the state. For example, the availability of the number of ambulances varies across counties. In 2025, counties either directly providing or contracting for ambulance services had between 1 and 42 licensed ambulances, and the median number of ambulances for counties was 8. Over a 4-year period from 2021 to 24, counties' ambulance services responded from a low of 33 to a high of 262,929 times. The median service responded about 15,000 times during that period. Included in the data is the average times of each stage of a call and response. There's no universally accepted benchmark for ambulance response times, but a general benchmark in urban areas is a sub 9-minute response time. In Tennessee, only 1 county service and 3 city services meet that benchmark. Appendix A has county-specific data. The 11 city ambulances also vary in nature. The city ambulance services range between 1 and 50 licensed ambulances, and the median number of ambulances owned by a city is owned by the 11 cities is 5 licensed ambulances. Over a 4-year period, 2021 to 24, the median city ambulance service responded 7,896 times. Appendix B has detailed data for the city ambulance services. Preliminary commission staff analysis of the Department of Health's data shows that less populous counties have longer response times, that is, the time it takes the ambulance crew to get to the patient, and longer transport times, the time it takes an ambulance and its patient to get to its destination, which is usually a hospital emergency room. This trend has remained true year over year since 2021. And you can view aggregate data about that statistic in Figure 3. I'm happy to answer any questions you may have. Otherwise, I thank you for your time and look forward to continuing our work on the study.
Are there questions for our presenter, Mayor Anderson, and then Mr. Peach? Mayor Anderson.
Ms. Peach can go first. I'll yield to her and come back.
Mr. Peach, yeah, okay. Thank you.
You called me her. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Peach,
Thank
you're
you for
recognized.
thank you. In your report, as it goes along, obviously, we've spoken quite a bit about this, something that I'm passionate about. My first adult job was in the EMS. As we discussed, I really hate, just as a statement, I really hate that this kind of pits counties against the cities. I don't think they need further like that, but it just is what it is. But in your report, I hope that it points out the differences of services that will be delivered to the unincorporated residents paying one time to the city residents that are paying twice. So I think that's going to be important. What different product or service are they getting? And then I can't even read my own writing. Also, the study on how can this affect efficiency and response times for the unincorporated areas. In other words, think of the county as a tire. And so if the cities decide to start running their own ambulance service, that the center cap there, the main portion possibly will have services. So now where's the county going to put their county services to ensure that they can still have a decent response time, but also be efficient and not have just an overload of paramedics because now they've lost half their population. And then also, I don't know if you can do this. I know you're doing the survey. Is most of the discontent that I've seen or that I've heard seems to be those counties that have farmed out or contracted their EMS services, which obviously is for profit. And so I'm kind of interested to see. I know all counties would like to have more revenue, and I get that, and I'm sympathetic. But I just wonder if it seems to be a lot of this movement is coming from those counties that have already given up providing that public service and pay for it by a private service. And thank you. Thank you for leveraging.
Yes. Okay, Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jeff, I apologize. A couple of comments. Number one, Jeff is exactly right. We're dealing with that in Williamson County, and you got to be real careful that you don't exclude. If cities start getting into it, your average response time to your rural areas is automatically going to go up because you're not going to be servicing. In Williamson County, for an example, 51% of our ambulance calls are in Franklin. So to go to some of the rural spots is significant. I was curious why on the appendices that you had listed today that our county was not listed at all.
So again, we're
There's
at a,
75 listed here.
right. So
How did you qualify to get to 25 not listed?
So we pulled data from the ambulance, it's called the EMS directory. It's on the
Right.
Tennessee Department of Health's website. And so that's where that data has come from, and it's been associated with data that we received from the NEMSIS data. I don't expect that we'll get to the actual draft report and be missing the data from those counties. We just wanted to put together what we had right now exactly and kind of give an update to the commission. And I'll be sure that Williamson County and the other counties get as much information in there as we can.
And the only other comment, Mr. Chairman, if you would allow, was that 4 or 5 years ago, we had some ARPA money. Many of the counties purchased ambulances under ARPA funding. That ARPA funding came through to the county side, and it represented all of your residents in there. So therefore, you could justifiably say, I'm getting it for a rural resident as well as a city resident. So maybe somewhere in your data, you'll see or ask that question, how many ambulances? Because the ambulances that we're ordering are taken from anywhere 18, as Bob will tell you about the fire trucks, they're taking 18 to 40 some odd months to get an ambulance to come in. And so all counties that are involved in this are having to budget purchase because they want 50% of that money up front. It's not one of these other avenues where as it comes to you can pay it. So I'm having to buy ambulances in 2026 on this year's budget that I won't even see until 2029 or later. And that's very difficult. So maybe the legislators could look at the way that is arranged or get some backfill. Just personal comment.
Yeah, absolutely. The commission did publish the rolling stock report, which kind of addressed that wait time issue across several different types of vehicles, and it included recommendations therein. But of course, as you know, the state's still experiencing these issues, and it's happening nationwide. And so I think that really digging in for the ambulance report to how ambulance services specifically can manage the rolling stock that they have, what they're trying to obtain, and kind of filling in the gap will be a point of focus in the draft.
Are there other questions? Yes.
I just wanted to, I appreciate what Mr. Peach said so much, but I also just wanted to point out, I know there was a brief mention of a cooperation in Sumner County between Portland and the county, but I think that exists in far more areas than is realized even by counties and cities. I think in the city of Gallatin, we have three fire stations that have ambulance bays that the city of Gallatin funded. And of course, we run we still maintain the cost on that. Additionally, I think it bears acknowledgement that so much of the fire service is now focused on providing medical support to patients that I would contend actually helps the ambulance services be more efficient, not necessarily have to respond to every call, et cetera. And so that is what makes it to me even more outrageous that somehow cities should be thought about bearing additional costs, because I feel like to some degree, we're already, providing support for things that we pay taxes for. So additional support in addition to what we pay taxes for.
Are there other comments or questions for the panel, this presenter? Well, there being none, I appreciate that. And thank you for your report. It's very thought-provoking. I believe that's our last panel, except for other business. Is that correct, Dr. Leopard?
That's correct.
I'm going to refer to Dr. Leopard for other business.
Thank you, Chairman. The only item that I have in other business is the next meeting date. Unfortunately, that's kind of an unknown until we have a better idea of when the General Assembly will be concluding this session. But as we move along, we will be polling members on dates. Expect something in June, our normal June timeframe. But we will be polling you as to your availability. Were there any other business? Nope.
Well, thank you very much for your